Hello, everyone, and welcome to Jaynky to the Max, a podcast where we talk about amazing creations and their even cooler creators who make them. Today on the show, we have Emmett, who is a brilliant neural net engineer, machine learning, data scientist, all that jazz. Before we get to that, we got a little bit of housekeeping. Do you know what's so important about this episode, Glavin?
What's that, Jay?
This is our fourth episode, which means
That it is.
that I think Brett told me this, but most podcasts don't make it past the third episode. So, I feel like this is a pretty big milestone right here.
That would be.
Also, a big thing that happened is we just reached or surpassed 500 members last week, but still we're celebrating halfway to 1,000, which is huge. And to celebrate that, let's see, April will be our space month, and during the entire month, we're going to have people who are working in different industries, sectors of space. So I got someone who's doing open source rockets. We got someone who's I think a CEO of a space startup. A lot of really awesome people. You guys are definitely going to want to stay on for that. I am so excited for it. It's going to be great. And also, remember to like, subscribe, follow us on Spotify, Pocket, Apple Podcasts. Should be just about everywhere. And if you are listening around there, you can always hop on our Discord server, which is Jaynky DIY. We host all these podcasts live, stream them live. It's always a blast. We have fun talking before and after the episode. It's like a before and after party. It's a lot of fun.
Exactly.
All right. I think that is all the big announcements. Let's give a warm Jaynky welcome to Emmett. Hi there.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. So tell us about Julia, and then tell us about Lathe and what makes it such a great programming language and framework.
So all of the machine learning programming these days is done inside of Python. And while we have Cython, it's like a lower end for Python, the conversion isn't always there. Like Python.h is kind of a hit or miss package to use inside of C. So sometimes you'll try and compile something with GCC to get it running because Python's not fast enough and it just won't work. Now with Julia, you get the high level, almost scripting language syntax of Python, which is great. And while Julia is not compiled, it is compiled, but it's compiled at runtime by a compiler. Different from, being compiled before execution like C or something where you get an executable file. What's so cool about that is that it makes Julia in turn really, really fast while also being really, really high level. So it's easy to get something up and running. And that's the problem that you have with working in Scala or, anything like that. And Scala also has the issues of JVM because it's JVM based. It has floating point inaccuracy, and for statistics that's usually not too viable. So Julia is just really cool because it's the best of all of those worlds. You can manage Hadoop just like you could with PySpark, but at the same time you're working in a language that is 4 times faster, so all it really needs is just the code base to support that speed, and then the language would really just take off on the machine learning front.
Oh yeah, no, it sounds like it's a unicorn language.
Yeah, it's definitely strange. A lot of people have voiced opinions on it, overtaking Python as the machine learning language, because let's be honest, Python's not really meant to be a machine learning language. It just happened to be, it just fell into the role. So
yes.
Yeah,
I like to think of it in terms of cars. If Python was a car, it'd be 4x4 loaded down with all the modules. There's the stuff bungee corded to the side.
It'd be a 4x4 sports car with milk crates on the top.
Yeah, then there's Julia, which is like a, I don't know, Ferrari or something. It's super fast. Requires some skill to drive, and yeah.
I mean, it's very specific.
Yes. So then, to kind of help with this, and I think it's really cool, instead of just waiting for someone else to develop a framework for Julia, you're actually going out and you're building one from the ground up, right? To facilitate machine learning?
Yeah, so I've been working on Lathe for probably almost half a year now. And what's cool about it is a lot of Julia's biggest problem is segmentation, because in Python I'll add, say, 3 packages. I'll pip3 install pandas, pip3 install sklearn, pip3 install TensorFlow, and those are pretty much, and NumPy, of course, but that comes with pandas. So those are pretty much the quintessential data science packages. Maybe use SciPy too, but you don't need anything else. In Julia, say I wanted to fit a decision tree classifier. Well, I'd have to go add a package called decisiontree.jl. And all that package is just a wrapper around the Python decision tree from sklearn. So they're calling sklearn. And none of this stuff works on Debian or Ubuntu in the first place, because there's actually a bug with that, where it can't find your Julia executable. So half of the server, 75% of the servers which are running Debian and Ubuntu are not going to be compatible with, this module. And even so, what's the point of using Julia if we're using a wrapper to interface with Python through Julia? Because then we lose the speed of Julia, you know what I mean? So the goal here is to get everything simple and in one place.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that is really impressive. So as essentially, you are trying to make all the functions that Julia has, all the advantages for machine learning, instead of just outsourcing it to Python, which is the current solution?
Yeah, I mean, there are different solutions out there for different things. Like, we have Flux, and Flux is fantastic, but there is one weird thing in Flux. Flux is, it's like the equivalent of TensorFlow, so it's for, building neural networks inside. So I built, a few CNNs and LSTM models inside of Flux, and I'll say it's really nice to build models in. It really is. I love Flux, but a lot of their stuff is, we're going for more fit this model kind of thing, where it's easy machine learning. You can fit and predict in 2 lines, whereas they're on the TensorFlow side of things. We're like the sklearn of Julia. But there are some weird things, for example, their one-hot encoder is 112 lines and is entirely its own module, when really you can do a one-hot encoder in 2 lines. And of course, it's way faster to just do it in 2 lines. So that ends up being a lot faster anyway. So I think a lot of things are also overcomplicated, and a lot of people just don't know how to use things because they're so overcomplicated. Where you could do something in 2 lines in Python, you have to do it in 6 in Julia. And it's just because the code base isn't there.
Right. It's only it started in 2012?
2014. They started working on it in 2012, but they consider the official release, which was 0.4, still version 0.4 in 2014.
Yeah, no, I was actually was still trying to pick up Julia and machine learning and such, and that's one of the biggest issues is the documentation.
Yeah,
it's really hard. And Emma, you've done a fantastic job helping with that. I follow you on Medium, and I always see, whenever I log in, I always see you've written 10 articles on data science and
yeah. Part of the goal with that too is to make the documentation so it's not so sketchy like that. If I went to Flux's documentation right now, and tried to build a flux model, there is no way that without knowing the knowledge that I have prior, I would just be able to. If I tried to go and just Google Julia around, I could not learn how to write anything in a day. It took me forever to learn just conditional masking in Julia because it's different from everything else. You use like a filter method. Everything in Julia is like methodized because it's functional, but
Right.
it's just strange because it's like they want people to join the language, but they also want it to be convoluted and have no documentation. So with Lathe, I kind of seek out to change that with the question mark documentation, which you're familiar with, where you can just use like the help method on anything. And I think that makes it really a lot easier.
I thought that was for Julia. That's just for Lathe?
No, well, it's for all of Julia, but it's not very widely used in all honesty. And I don't really know why. It's because they used to have like a different scheme for doc strings, and they kind of changed the doc string scheme. And I think it made a lot of packages just innate, unusable, basically. They changed a lot of stuff like struct. Like instead of saying mutable struct, you used to say mutable type, but now you say mutable struct. So a lot of things have changed around, and that's like a core feature of the language is being able to construct types. So very weird.
Yeah, I remember that was a huge frustration because you find a tutorial and it was actually semi-complete and you're like, yes, finally! And you start doing it and then there's some weird compile error and I'm like, oh, it's outdated. No. So, all I have to say for the audience out there that's interested, if you've never done machine learning before, or if you haven't really done much programming, do not start with Julia. Not yet, at least. Start maybe with Python or something that's a little bit easier. But for those of you who kind of know the basics, check out Julia. You're probably going to have to ask a lot of questions and hop on a few servers, but yeah, it's a pretty cool language.
Yeah, I think honestly, at a certain point, we're just gonna start learning Julia when it comes to data science, and that'll just be the language. They're teaching it at a lot of universities. I actually get a lot of messages from students who are asking me about like jump optimization and stuff. They're like, "How do I optimize this?" I'm like, "Oh, you just do this." So it is interesting that a lot of people are learning it now, so I'm kind of excited for like the future, especially in the terms that I kind of created the scikit learn of Julia. So
right. That's an amazing. What I love about Julia is that it's not like these super established languages where everyone's done everything big. At least with Julia, it's just beginning, so you have an opportunity to really get in on the ground level and have a huge impact, which I it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's a really amazing opportunity to learn and yeah. So how long do you think it'll be before it hits mainstream? If you were to give a rough estimate of time.
Well, there's a lot of cool stuff coming in 0.1.0. We got to remember we're still really low on the version. We're in 0.0.9, and that just dropped. And that brought a lot with it. Like we brought the one-hot encoder and all kinds of new distributions. But what I really think we need is more models, more like multinomial MB is a must, logistic regression is a must.
You want to go over and explain that?
Yeah, well, the biggest issue with those kind of models is that you have a recursive cost function. And the problem with a recursive cost function is, of course, it's recursive. So it's very intensive. And any way that I can kind of avoid having a cost or loss function would be massively beneficial. So for a lot of them, like for example, linear regression, most people write linear regression with, a loss function, but there's a mathematical way to get around that. It's just simple linear regression. But it's better on the CPU by far. And we're talking prediction times of like 7 milliseconds on millions of observations. Whereas normally, in Python using sklearn with their loss function, and that's with fit and predict too. So this is just the fit part, not even the predict part. You're still looking at over like 26 milliseconds at the very least, usually over 300.
Wow. Yeah, that stacks up after when you get really large data sets.
Yeah. I mean, and another thing with Python too is sometimes if the data's so much, you won't even be able to read it in. Like over 1 million observations, I've never had in Python, never been able to. But in Julia, I've ran like 30 million observations through it fine. And that's like in the realm of something you would deal with in Scala. You wouldn't even try and touch that in R or Python. But Julia just handles it like a champ. So I really love that language for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I joke that Julia plays hard to get. She's it's a she. It's not an it. It's a she.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely were accurate in the naming scheme. They decided to call it Julia for a reason.
I find that really funny. Have you looked at the Wikipedia page? Because I was like, okay, what's the real reason? Because there's got to be a real reason why the guy named it Julia. And supposedly, he just liked the name. And I'm like, oh, come on, there's got to be a story behind it. Like, so he lost a bet with someone.
I don't know.
He had a really great night, passed out.
I mean, Julia is just like a product of MIT. And what's interesting is like, what's the name of that space station? You might know I'm talking. LIGO?
ISS?
LIGO. It's not a space station, but LIGO it measures gravitational something.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, LIGO, which actually runs on Debian, fun fact. But they actually code a lot of LIGO systems in Julia because it's all MIT and they love using their own language, of course. But,
of course.
But yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, I remember, what's the Julia, like, they have a site for business. Was it called Julia?
Julia Computing?
Yeah, Julia Computing. You guys should check it out. You can see some of the...
Yeah, they're also responsible for a few really cool packages like ML Data Utils and Jump, which is the package I was talking about earlier for optimization. So there are some really cool things that they put out.
Yeah, or like right now they have like protecting the electrical grid, robot locomotion, GDP, astronomy. There's a ton of stuff, and it's bursting. You just wish it had better documentation.
Yeah. It's cool too with Julia because it's not necessarily like a data science or machine learning language per se, but it's just a general purpose, but mostly statistical language. So a lot of like the people using it are astronomers and biologists, and it's just really cool to interact with those other people at like, data conventions and stuff. JuliaCon, for example, where you'll meet a biologist and you'll be like, what are you even programming for? But it's really cool because it's just like a different community than Python, where everyone's just writing a scripting language.
Yeah, Python you get much more not the script kiddies, but the beginners that people are learning, and it reaches a whole new class with Julia.
Yeah, a lot less scientists.
We mean in Python?
Yeah, because a lot of scientists are already using those lower level languages. I mean, R is pretty common for science, but Python really isn't that common. It seems like what happened is first we had MATLAB, and everyone was using either MATLAB or R, and then people started using Python, R, and MATLAB. And now gradually the scientists are switching over to Julia, and hopefully that will continue, and we'll all be on Julia one day, and it'll be a perfect world.
I'll be singing Kumbaya.
Yeah. So,
0.0.9.
yeah. So we are very early in the versions, but there's a lot that gets done each version. So,
Yeah, what are some of the big updates you're planning on making?
I'm planning on adding a lot more mods. I'd like to even get into like the grit of like a random forest classifier, all of that great stuff. Just because I also was thinking about having a little like Flux extension, because Flux doesn't have a lot of like pre-builts like TensorFlow and Keras does. So I think it'd be really cool to, just have some pre-builts inside of Lathe that people can access just whenever they use Lathe. But yeah, because that's essentially what Lathe is. That's essentially what sklearn is too. It's just a library of pre-built models that you can just apply to any situation that work well. And on top of that, in Lathe, you get the stats and the pre-processing, which the pre-processing comes in sklearn, but not so much the stats. So yeah, really cool.
Wow. I got to also ask, why the name Lathe?
Well, it's kind of just a joke because, lathe machining. That was kind of the point. I was like, you can manipulate your machine learning with a lathe because the lathe can machine.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of a joke, but yeah, I don't know. And then the name just stuck, so I like it.
Yeah, no, it's a good name. You're going to have some problems with SEO. Oh, wait, maybe not. And you're actually popping up the top results. Last time I searched for it, it was like it popped me down like all these random pictures of Julia or Lathe.
There was I just had a server migration recently.
Okay.
I switched from Ubuntu to Red Hat and migrated my servers into Colorado from Singapore. So good grief, So a lot of things changed, and I had to go back into the Google search engine console and get all my stuff fixed. And it's still saying I have errors and dead links, but yeah, that's where we're at.
Oh gosh. Yeah, search engine optimization's a pain. Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, just make sure you put Julia whenever you search for Lathe, and you should be good.
Yeah, if you just search for Lathe, good luck.
Yeah, you'll find some good deals on some blades though.
Which, I mean, admittedly are pretty cool. Ooh, first thing that pops up is a video about amazing fastest wood lathe, machine operation, modern ... That looks about right.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at it. Cool.
Who were you using, like a online service provider, or were you just hosting this on a VPS?
So right now I'm hosting on a VPS. I've been kind of all over. I've tried shared hosting. I've tried just because a lot of the hosting that I do is static files. I mean, I deploy a lot, but like it'd be better for me to not have an Nginx configuration for Nginx is like the web server and the load balancer. Yeah. It'd be better for me not to have a configuration for all of those like static files being served, as well as all of my, port writing servers like Flask or Genie, which Genie's for Julia, so that's cool. But, Django, all that stuff is running on there too. So it gets really like intertwined, and sometimes you'll have annoying things where you'll configure a server and then it will go to the static files, and then you'll have to disable the static files, see if the server is actually working, re-enable the static files. And all of this is, of course, removing configurations and then reloading configurations. And then, it's a lot of work. And it's all through SSH, so it's not fun, It takes a couple hours.
Oh, DevOps, gotta love it.
Yeah, no, not for me.
Yeah, I know. I was dealing with some issues, and what's so, I guess, infuriating for me about DevOps is that you work really hard and you get whatever website or program, whatever, you got it working on locally, and you're like, yes, this is golden, it's beautiful, I love it. Let's serve this up. And you serve it up, and then you get like 50 stupid errors because it doesn't like your YAML file or something.
Yeah, it's crazy. Something that really gets on my about Julia's Genie. This is a shout out to Julia Genie. So Julia Genie does really great with environments because it comes with like 4 different environments that you can load up with your web server, and you can like basically it's like you SSH into them. You don't, but you load the environment through Julia with a bash script, so you activate it through SH with like source, so you source like bin/REPL, and then you can install all of your packages through there. Although you could just activate it through the REPL with activate, like pkg.activate. But we're getting in the realm of too much Julia here. But
so Genie is the web server, or the not the web server, but like the web app framework for.
Yeah, the web server framework. You're right there. And I mean, it handles environments really well, but there definitely are a lot of annoying things about Genie where it just won't host. And sometimes with Nginx, it really has a lot of trouble. So yeah, Genie is one of my big annoyances. And another thing, it would be really great so whenever you create a project, it doesn't create a project.2ml file, which would be optimal because the server can't run without the project.2ml file, right? So you have to nano one up, right, and make your dependency, like make it from scratch, basically, for no reason. Like they could just make one automatically for you. But yeah, what's annoying though is you put the dependencies in there, but it doesn't do anything. Like it doesn't matter at all, because those dependencies, you still have to add them into the virtual environments manually. So there's no point in even having the dependencies there. You might as well just put the name of the thing. I don't even think you have to put anything in there, to be honest. But yeah, very tedious.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a beginning language. You're gonna have all these little kinks that you have to work out.
Yeah, the quirks.
Yeah. Well, changing gears. What about your the programming language you're building from the ground up?
Yeah, so Leia is really cool because in a lot of ways it's kind of based off of Julia, if I'm being honest, because there's so many things from Julia that I like. But if you like C-Lisp or Lisp in general or Scheme, then you'll really like it because it's basically Lisp and Scheme with the macros, a huge focus on macros, but centered more towards the realm of Julia.
Want to explain what a macro is for the audience who doesn't know?
It's the mathematical equivalent of lemma, basically. It's like a function that you can call inline, basically. An action that you can call inline. I shouldn't say function, but yeah. It's really cool.
All right, so continue. I interrupted.
Yeah, I mean, what I think is really going to be cool about it is just a lot of the Lisp-like languages don't really have a package manager and are not based in one foundation. They're all general purpose languages, just like Lisp is. So it'd be really cool to have one that's not so general purpose, that's more like a meta statistical language, which is the same thing that Julia's considered, but Julia does not have that huge focus on meta, and it's a functional language. So it'd be interesting to take kind of those functional properties that Lisp has while also maintaining the great package manager. Oh my goodness, Julia has a great package manager. And
yes, I love
my favorite package manager ever. But a great package manager and, the environments and all of the lovely features that you get inside of Julia, but basically take that and put it into Lisp.
So you're saying that Julia comes with a good package? Sorry. All right. Well, you actually, what's the language called? I remember there being an emoji in there,
Leia, yeah. Leia's the name of the language, and it's a joke because it's a mix of lemma, which is going back to the mathematical macro thing. If you look up the definition of lemma, it's kind of the equivalent of a mathematical macro, and it's just kind of a joke. But the why just comes from the why that you're predicting, because I couldn't come up with anything better.
They got me thinking. When you showed me the screenshot of the flamingo emoji on the REPL, what if there was a programming language that used emojis? Like the whole thing, like it'd be a combination of something like Scratch, but then it's text based since you're like typing them. I feel like that'd be a really hilarious gimmick that would do absolutely nothing and be super inefficient, but it'd be hilarious nonetheless.
It would be cool if we had emoji keyboards.
Yes.
If I was typing it on my phone, then maybe, but not on a laptop, because then I'll have to click the screen and then press the emoji button in GNOME. Yeah.
No, it'd be for programming on your phone. That'd be like the whole thing.
Okay, yeah, that might work. But yeah, I mean, that REPL, funny enough, is actually written in Bash. There is no assembly-based read, evaluate, print right now. I haven't written it in because, man, I've been busy,
Oh, yeah, you've been telling us a little bit about the insane neural net machine learning scene that's going on in, not Silicon Valley, but in just tech in general.
Oh, yeah. There's a huge arms race right now. A lot of people don't realize it, but right now, every big tech company on Earth is racing for machine learning dominance. They are racing for superiority. Like, think about what Google's doing right now. They're releasing phones with huge AI features. Like, I have a Pixel 3, They're releasing phones with huge AI features. Google made TensorFlow. They're pushing their Google Cloud platform for computing. AWS is the same thing. Amazon's doing the same thing. They're pushing machine learning. They're trying to make, self-flying drones that fly through the air. Microsoft has been pushing Azure. You go on cable TV, you see ads for all of this. Even Apple is pushing machine learning. And don't even get me started on SpaceX and Tesla and all that, Of course, That's all machine learning. So we're in like a arms race right now. And that kind of makes it scary to be a data scientist, because that means that every company it's like you're working at NASA before you landed on the moon. You know what I mean? Against the Soviet Union. It's crazy.
So for all those people who are looking for jobs or work, pick up data science, machine learning. You'll have some incredible job skill security.
Yeah, and it's highly in demand. I think it was Forbes estimated that 2020 to 2021 there will be 200,000 data scientist positions unfilled. I think that's correct.
200,000?
Yeah.
Dang.
I can search it up, but Forbes.
Wow. So, and also for certification and such, as long as you have a project record, you don't really have to have a degree in data science, do you?
So, well, it kind of depends. Like some data scientists will tell you you need a quantitative degree, like a master's in computer science, but I don't have a master's in anything. It's really just being able to demonstrate your skills. Explain what's going on, and no statistics. I think as long as you're able to put that forth and put that idea forward, like I'm approached all the time. I'm not a college graduate, and I'm approached all the time by random people asking to do basically contracted work with machine learning, so
wow. So yeah, I always love to hear that.
Yeah, but get prepared for a lot of work and get prepared to be overwhelmed for the rest of your life when you get into it, because even where I'm at right now, I'll run into times where I'm like, what on earth? I have no idea.
Which is pretty hard to imagine. It seems like you know your stuff. No, but yeah, machine learning, picking up data science, machine learning. I mean, I have not learned or picked it up fully by any means, but like just learning the basics was such an intensive process because there's just like so much stuff that's going on, and you're like, is this magic? This seems like magic to me. Why? How is this working?
Yeah, imagine writing the low level of that too. What's your favorite model?
Me?
Yeah, what's your favorite machine learning model?
I've only worked with. I haven't graduated above general regression, so I know I know I've much to learn.
So we're excluding like neural networks from this, obviously, because it's just models. But my favorite model, 100% random forest classifier. Love that thing. Such a cool model. I don't remember the name of the guy that came up with it, but man, he was a smart guy.
Random forest classifier, does that just group similar things together?
It's a categorical model, but it's really accurate, and the way that it works is off of permutations. So it'll use permutations, which are basically just weights, and has a loss function, all of that.
Wow, that sounds really fun. So, where can people go to learn more, learn about Julia, learn about? I know we've talked about how poor not podcasting, but the tutorials are for Julia, but is there any good place to start?
Well, as for Lathe, I would go to lathe.ai or the Lathe GitHub page. And as for Julia, I don't know. I guess the best way to learn Julia is just to get some packages and start playing around and kind of Google as you go, per se, because there's really not like a sound tutorial, like the definitive tutorial to go through, at least not right now. I know there is one video on YouTube that's like learn Julia in one video, but I think I watched like 5 minutes of it and I was like, this is terrible, because it was like, I'm going to teach you how to print hello world in Julia. Okay, it's one line.
Yeah, again, people, there's so much opportunity to get in the ground level to really help grow this language.
Yeah, I mean, the syntax is really cool too. It's very interesting syntax. It's kind of like MATLAB, C. Yeah, even C. There's a little bit of C in there, and Python all had a baby, and it's like a weird deformed baby. It's very strange, but yeah.
And people can go find you on Medium, right?
They can find me on Medium, find me on GitHub, github.com. It's all /EmmettGB. So medium.com/@EmmettGB. And I just signed up for Twitter recently, actually.
Oh, nice. Oh, wait. That's a shout out to all the other people. Follow us on Twitter. We're Jaynky DIY. I like posting, tweeting different pictures of projects and such you guys are working on. Maybe a few quotes here and there. But yeah, follow us on Twitter. And follow Emmett on Twitter, too.
Give everyone a follow. Follow me on GitHub. That's more important to me. I have one other. LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Yes. All right. Yeah. That's
Emmett Boudreaux.
Is that how you say that? Boudreaux. Okay.
Yeah. It's Cajun. It's really cool.
Interesting. Yeah, that is pretty cool. All right, cool.
B-O-U-D-R-E-A-U.
Gotta love it. Yep. All right, and as always, follow us, like, share. I think Apple has a review process. I haven't looked into optimizing for podcasts, like growing numbers. I'm just working the production end, but I will be working on that soon. So, yes, follow us, all that jazz. Tweet about us. And no matter where you are, whatever project you're working on, remember, keep it janky to the max!
Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Jaynky to the Max. If you like it, make sure to like the video and subscribe. And if you want to suggest more projects that we can feature, make sure to comment down below, or even better, join the Discord server in the description. We try to stream live every weekend on the server, so make sure to join and grab the podcast role if you want to be there and see it for yourself. Anyway, make sure to stay janky.